Welcome, everybody, to our latest episode of the HigherHer podcast, put on by Talent Collective, which is our global community for women in talent acquisition. I am Natalie Stones, one of the co-founders, and I'm joined today with Krista. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and today we are excited to chat with Katy Culver. She is joining us to talk about her background, her business. What's really cool about Katy is she comes on with a little bit different of a journey than some of our other podcast hosts. So I will let Katy formally introduce herself, but a little bit about her background. She is a coach for candidates that are in career transition, better known as career coach, mindset mentor for generalists. So understanding the feeling of not being super niche in any one specific area. She uses her experience pivoting careers and her various other recruiting expertise to really coach individuals on how to be a CEO of their own career, clarifying their path, how to be a standout candidate to win the job search. So without further ado, Katy, I'd love for you to formally introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you. I feel like that was a pretty great intro, but maybe just to give a little bit more color. So yeah, I'm a career coach and mindset mentor for generalists in transition. And I mostly work with people in tech and consulting where we have many generalists. And I'm happy to share more about why I chose the term generalist. I think it's getting a little bit more celebration nowadays than it used to. But I'm happy to start there and tell you a little bit more about why I do this work. Okay, cool. So I won't tell you too much of the backstory, but I decided to become a career coach purely based out of my own challenges with the job search. So when I was in my consulting career, I kind of did the classic look ahead. Do I want to get promoted? Do I want my manager's job? And the answer was no. I felt like I had always throughout my career wanted that next level, always wanted to drive to the top without really any understanding of why. What was I really looking to gain by getting there? So I did a lot of self-reflection and I took the time to get clear on what I wanted next in my career. And as many people go through this process, they realize that that next move, if you don't like where you're at, it's probably kind of different. And that means you have to go through some sort of pivot. And of course, there's various degrees of pivot. But I knew I wanted to eventually be an entrepreneur. I eventually wanted to start my own business, which is what I'm doing now. But I had no idea how I was going to get there and bridge that gap. So for me, I started by saying, okay, well, I could go join a startup, figure out how teams get hired, products get built, and essentially companies get created from the ground up and learn the skills of what it's like to be a founder. And that pivot for me was really challenging. I remember going into the interview process, the job search process, and getting handpicked for roles that were very similar to my background, but I felt like those aren't the roles that I want. So it's kind of this catch-22 that I feel like so many candidates, especially generalists, face when you could go and do a lot of things, but how do you get clear on what you want to do? And how do you actually stand out to the teams that are hiring for qualifications? You've got to, match the requirements of the role. And in that process, I experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of self-doubt. And I eventually joined an accelerator program to focus on startups. I committed to what I wanted. And now I have a term for it. I call it, becoming a standout candidate. But at the time, I just essentially had iterated on what is my story? How do I want to position myself? And how do I take an approach that's not just apply online and wait for the recruiter to call you? And kind of fast forward a couple of years, I ended up joining a recruiting tech startup because I was like, how do recruiters do this? How do these decisions get made? I kind of get inside your heads and work with hiring managers to understand how the hiring process works. And I feel like I have this great gift now because I'm able to combine that understanding and context with the feelings of feeling so lost in your career and feeling like not sure how to navigate the process. So that's why I do the work that I do now and helping other generalists get that clarity and navigate the job search process. Obviously, it's changed a lot in the last few years with AI. And I think the strategies I used to teach people to pivot careers are now what people are needing to do when they're not pivoting careers, just to stand out and get noticed among the sea of applicants. So happy to talk more about that. But that's why I created the business that I have now.
Amazing inspiration. And always the best, entrepreneurial businesses are ones that are kind of a reflection of something you experienced yourself. So very cool. I actually would like to double down a little bit and understand a little bit more. How do you actually partner with the people that you coach? And maybe you can explain a little bit more also, like, okay, when we were coaching maybe a year or two ago, it looked like this,
Yeah.
but now it looks like this. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, great question. So I started out working with people, as many people do, and starting their own businesses nowadays. It's like I started on the side, started writing on LinkedIn, got a few clients from that. And over time, like working with people one-on-one, I saw kind of the commonalities of challenges that a lot of generalists face. And that's why I decided to focus on helping generalists. Last summer in August, I launched a group coaching program. So that's kind of my core program now. It's called the Purposeful Path Accelerator. It's essentially a group coaching program and community, which is a really important part of the job search, to help people go through the curriculum to figure out exactly what they want, learn how to brand and position themselves, and then stand out with. I like to teach people how to use deliverables and videos and creative approaches essentially to show proof that they can do the work to get a job rather than just preparing really well for interviews, which obviously matters as well. And so within that container, I provide a lot of feedback and support, but it's really beautiful to watch people who are feeling kind of in that in-between phase, between jobs, between career paths, whether they've been laid off or just feeling like their current workplace is no longer a match, kind of regain the confidence to step into that next phase of their career. I think, of course, I love celebrating people getting new jobs and negotiating with them and all of that piece. But watching people say I'm acting in a way that I would have never seen myself act a month ago because I'm just putting myself out there. I know my value, and that's the best part for me.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you really get them to a place of clarity and confidence that maybe they didn't have previously. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pace of change in the world of business is fast, and that drives incredible complexity for the world of human resources.
Welcome to the HR Data Lab's Brown Bag Lunch, a series of conversations with experts inside and outside the world of human resources on how to innovate, measure, and evolve our practices.
Our goal is to help provide you with practical examples of how HR has to change and to meet in this complex business environment.
Every week, we'll talk to new and different voices on all aspects of human resources.
And guess what? You get to chat with us live.
Live?
Live.
So they can answer questions or they can ask us questions.
They can ask, they can answer, whatever they want. They get to talk with us live.
That's awesome.
Sometimes we geek out on the data and technology that underlie the processes that drive the world of HR.
But the conversations are always insightful and fun. So please enjoy the HR Data Lab's Brown Bag Lunch.
Thanks, Katy. And I love that this episode is coming right now because we actually just did a survey with all of our members and just about Talent Collective and like the benefits that we offer and stuff. But we actually did quite a big section on our podcast here and asking people like, are you listening to this? If not, why not? You know, some people just hadn't even heard of it, right? But multiple people had said one of the things that would draw them to listening to this podcast is hearing more about how they themselves can find a good job, right? Because like this economy for recruiters specifically is still so challenging even after 2 years of just these crazy mass layoffs. So I think while you help a variety of different profiles of candidates, I think the recruiters that are out there listening right now will probably get a lot of benefit from this as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that tension. You mentioned it already a little bit, but that natural tension between, both the candidates and recruiters, the supply and demand, and how that's really getting kind of complicated by the use of AI, both on the candidate side and the recruiting side. So tell us, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my first experience with this kind of natural tension point was actually when I was a candidate, feeling like, oh, these recruiters are the gatekeepers to getting a job or not. And I think that sort of unearthed it a little bit more when I was working in the recruiting space. I worked for a recruiting tech company where we built out automation tools and tech both used by both hiring managers who didn't yet have recruiters for, early stage startups, and then, VPs of talent recruiting teams who essentially wanted to be early to the wave of AI and automate a lot of their processes. And I noticed through that process that nobody wants to spend a ton of time hiring, not the recruiter, not the hiring manager. Everybody wants that next candidate to be the one that they hire. It's just rarely the next person, right? And so the more obvious it is that you are a good fit for the role, and the way that I like to define that is every role exists to solve company problems. Now, generalists, particularly the people that I work with, are expert problem solvers. They can connect the dots, see the forest through the trees across different functional areas and domain expertise. But all jobs exist essentially because there's a problem and they've decided we're going to scope out this role, ideally budget for it. Sometimes that happens later. And there's this natural tension point where the recruiters really want to make sure that they're making the best use of time for everyone else in the company. And so what happens a lot of time for people who have a various background or who don't have the most obvious story, it becomes really hard to get past that first round of explaining your story just from a resume or just from an application online. And so a big way that I tell people to approach the process, recruiters as well, whoever it is to reach out to the team and show proof in some way that you can solve the problems related to that role with demonstrating your past work, bringing one of the recruiters, people ops folks that I worked with recently. She brought into her process, a new hire onboarding process that she had made within her company. That was a big pain point, a big challenge for this new org. So she brought that in and proactively and said, hey, here's how I think about this and how I would bring this to your company. But in this process, I think recruiters are so overwhelmed with applicants. Like you said, recruiters have been laid off by budget cuts in tech specifically. And so everyone's being forced to do more with less. And so the more that candidates come in through side doors, and of course, you want them to be in the system, but to get noticed beyond that, the more that you can just get noticed by the hiring team or people on the team. And a lot of people mention this in the vein of get referrals, right? But I think that has become a check the box activity rather than the real emphasis behind it, which is building advocates within the company. But I think what happens here with AI is that candidates are then well, I need to apply to more jobs because the jobs I'm applying for are not converting for me. So let me just apply to more jobs. And in order to do that, I need to use AI more. So then everybody on paper sounds like the job description. Everybody is trying to force fit. And so there's just a bunch of fluff. And that's why I think doing the creative approach, really bringing extra things besides just the text-based resume, the text-based cover letter, like a video or a mini project to demonstrate your value goes so far in this process. And not only for recruiters, but for the hiring manager themselves who needed this person yesterday, essentially.
So you're saying before, let's say they want to reach out directly to the hiring manager, they know who the hiring manager is, something like that. So even before they apply potentially, or maybe they apply and simultaneously reach out to the hiring manager and they send a video with it or have already basically done a project, a task, essentially demonstrating their value.
Yeah. And people try different approaches. One of the gals within my program, she's a marketer. She's really good at video. We essentially crafted her elevator pitch to tell her story. And then she creates a little video, sends that into an executive or a leader and along with her application. So kind of applying by pitching yourself directly. Then I have another candidate who is he's tried the video. He's I don't really love doing the videos, but I've created this really strategic portfolio that I can very quickly update. He's going for executive level, very senior chief of staff roles. So he's essentially done some A/B testing and found that he can get an 80% reply rate by directly emailing it to executives who pass it along. And that is crazy compared to the 5%, if you're lucky, return on applications that people are getting. And the problem, because of the low application rate, is that people then need to apply to more jobs because they're not getting enough interviews. And of course, you'll be lucky if you convert those interviews, right? Because then you end up not being the right fit. The people who are the better fit for the job end up getting it at the end of the day. If they like you, you can get passed through. But, when push comes to shove and they're saying, hey, are we going to invest $150,000 in this person? No. So the more targeted, the better qualified you are and the better that your story conveys that, the more likely you are to convert at the end of the process, which saves time for recruiters and it saves time for candidates and just so much emotional stress.
Yeah, when I worked at a Series A startup, the founders, both of them, would send me emails of candidates being the resume is not perfect, but they sought me out and sent me this amazing letter about why they'd be a great fit. I'd love for you to interview them, right? And they're people that I would not have otherwise interviewed. So I think you're absolutely right.
But I think the interesting piece about that is the reason why the recruiter wouldn't necessarily pick that person out of the pile is because they're trying to protect the hiring managers, the hiring team time.
Yes.
And it's not like anything against certain types of candidates. It's just a matter of that. So when you go directly to the hiring team, of course, it doesn't always help the system and the process, but it removes that barrier for the recruiter.
Yep, that's great. Thanks.
Cool. So we've been talking about all the amazing work you do in supporting candidates during a challenging time, but I'd love to pivot it to you a little bit. One of the things that we'd like to ask all of our guests is to share kind of a vulnerable or serious challenge that you overcame personally or professionally. Our audience really resonates with that vulnerability and being able to connect with the stories that you share. So is there anything that you went through that was a serious challenge or a vulnerability that you could share?
Yeah. I talked a little bit earlier about my kind of process of questioning my career path and needing to make a pivot. So I'll choose a different one, actually. I could talk more about the pain points of that, but I think a lot of people can relate to being in between work and not knowing what the next move is. I think an interesting path that a lot of people are considering, and I've talked to many recruiters too, who are building their own fractional or freelance consulting businesses in general, is that pivot from not just employee to working for someone else, but from employee to entrepreneur. And I think there's a lot of people in today's day and age, especially with the instability with full-time jobs, that are like, is this really that much more stable? And I'm talking to tons of people who are building fractional. And for me, that was a long decision-making process of like deciding to quit my full-time, well-paying startup tech job that, I loved the team I worked with. I loved the people I worked with. And I had good work-life balance. And it was a big decision, I think, for me to overcome my own limiting beliefs, fears, self-doubt about what was possible for me. And it took a lot of reprogramming work, and I could talk for days about that. But I think if there's anybody out there listening to this who has wondered, what if I chose this path? And you've been thinking about something for a while, it's not going away. The little pings of like maybe what you guys felt around starting this or starting the Talent Collective, it's like those little pings don't go away, they get louder if it's really something you're meant to do. And so I would just say like, figuring out people who've gone ahead of you and done the things you want to do and using that as inspiration that you can do it too just really makes such a difference. For me, I did a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching, and my circle of friends has expanded to include so many entrepreneurs that it's just like I have a very big vision for myself, for my business, and I would not have believed that it could come true if I didn't meet people who are already doing it. And so I think that for me was a big unlock, is realizing that, wow, you can really do whatever you set your mind to. You have to do the work to, overcome the beliefs that tell you you can't, and find proof points of other people who've done it successfully. And I apply that same thing when I think about, for a lot of my clients who are pivoting new careers, it's like, find the people who've done it already and you can do it too. It's just a matter of the belief. And maybe that was a little high level. I'm happy to go into more details, but it's a long story.
No, that's great. I think Krista and I can definitely resonate with that. When you said the pings, what stood out for me is, after getting laid off a couple of times, I was like, I'm going to go fractional. To your point, like so many people are just trying to take control of their own careers now. And to this day, Krista still operates fractionally to stay really close and connected to recruiting. But I honestly felt like,
hey there, I'm Tim Boris, host of the Working Well podcast, where business strategy meets human sustainability. If you're an executive, a leader, or change maker ready to ditch burnout, build thriving teams, and drive real results, this is your next must listen. Tune in on the Work Defined Network or at timboris.com/podcast.
okay, I'm doing fractional recruiting, but something's still missing for me. And so that's where then I figured out, okay, this like community element, I need something different, unique. I need like networking events and all this stuff, which ended up being what now is Talent Collective. And it just stuck and it was natural. And you have finally found the right iteration of what your entrepreneurial path is when it's just smooth and natural. I mean, it's not perfect every day, but that ping is like, oh yeah, this feels great. Like I'm excited to do the work every day. I'm getting good. What's the word? Just like feedback from people. People are interested in it. There's actually value that I seem to be providing. So I definitely advocate for entrepreneurs in life, but sometimes it's like iterative process, right? My first entrepreneurial journey isn't necessarily the one that I fell in love with, but it got me to this one. So
Yeah.
Krista might have a story, but
very much relate to that. And I think also for people who feel like I need to pick the right thing, it's almost like you just get started, you get feedback, you grow your confidence in that thing. And I know that like this is my first, I guess, entrepreneurial journey besides like lemonade stands growing up. And it's like, I know that my next level, like for me, part of my vision is I've always wanted to write books and speak on stages. And I'm like, okay, let me build my coaching business first. Let me build my brand and really truly help people and then expand my visibility and have a place for those people to go and have community. Mm-hmm. And so I've started to not rush the process so much and say it's okay for me to have different iterations. But it's so rewarding to get that feedback. Like people will join I do free trainings, masterclasses, and people will join and be like, you are doing what you're meant to be doing. Like I can feel the passion.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth fighting for in your career. It's a long time where you got to go to work, right? And so if you can speed that up through entrepreneurship or just loving what you do, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Cool. Well, let's close out. I'd love to hear if there are any specific mentors or books or experiences that have really helped you on your professional journey and career.
I have had so many amazing managers and leaders who believe in me, so I'm not going to individually name all of them. And I will name a specific book that I think has had the biggest difference, biggest impact on me. I actually discovered it about a year ago when I was starting my entrepreneurial journey, but I think everyone needs to read this book. It's called Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He's an organizational psychologist. He's written a lot of books for entrepreneurs. But I think what it really does very well is it essentially ties your identity, how you see yourself, to the actions that you take and therefore the results that you have. So if you want to be somewhere different in your life, if you want to start a business, if you want to start creating content or get that new job or just something in your personal life, start figuring out who is that version of you and how do they think and operate differently, and start making decisions today to act in that way. And that is how you get there. And so it is the identity shifting is the biggest tool that I teach and I preach to everyone around changing your behaviors. So game-changing book.
Love that. I listen to a lot of Ed Milet. He's a podcaster and has written books and stuff like that. But he talks a lot about that. Like your identity is like, can be your biggest advocate, like who you believe yourself to be, or it can be your biggest like detriment, right? Because if you believe you're meant for great things, if you believe you're meant to be in this group of people or this class, right, then you will be. And if you don't, then you won't, right? So, well, really, really helpful. Thanks for sharing everything here today with us, Katy. This has been a wonderful way to get to know you, and hopefully our listeners will reach out to you. Where can people find you after listening today?
Great question. Thank you so much for having me as well. I'm primarily on LinkedIn. So my name on LinkedIn is Katy Culver. I'll give you guys the link so you can put it in the show notes here. And then I also have a newsletter that I send out at katyculver.co. So there I'll share all my other info, but those are the main places.
Great. Yeah, we'll put all that in the show notes. So thank you again, Katy, for being here with us. We really appreciate it. And all the listeners out there, please like and subscribe. And we're just happy that you're listening. If you ever want to get involved in Talent Collective, please also reach out to myself or Natalie. And thanks for joining us today. Until next time.